A former comedian went to the White House yesterday, and the result, well, it was kind of laughable. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy sat down with President Trump in the Oval Office yesterday, but it felt more like a UFC octagon. The two clashed over a possible ceasefire in the Ukraine-Russia war, with Zelenskyy trying to lecture Trump before the president kicked him out of the White House. Zelenskyy still hasn't apologized for what Trump calls disrespect, but according to someone inside the room, what really set off the fireworks was Zelenskyy's body language. Apparently, 30 minutes of head shaking and eye rolling was just too much for President Trump and VP Vance. Lisa, I don't know, if you've gone back and looked at the whole 40 minutes, I had to do it because people on X started pointing out that the majority of people in this country that are reacting to this strongly only saw that last 10 minutes maybe of a 40-minute press conference where Zelenskyy was eye rolling, body language the whole time.
Yeah, and I think the frustration is just because, okay, so for instance, I'll tell a story. There used to be a Starbucks near Fox News, and there was a homeless guy that used to open the door for people. And so I would buy him food but then he started getting a little greedy, and he started having specific demands about what he wanted. No, it has to be this sandwich. I need this orange juice. And so at some point you're like, I was trying to be generous, but when you're asking for so much, I have less of a desire to want to help you. And I feel like that's Zelenskyy right now, right? We've given him hundreds of billions of dollars, and he doesn't seem to be appreciative of that money. He comes into our house, the people's house, and then insults our president. And then also, I think why President Trump is so good on foreign policy is that he sees the world from a very realistic lens. And, he looks at Putin. Obviously, Putin's a bad guy, but he's also looking at Zelenskyy. And if you heard about any other president, any other country that did some of these things, like suspending elections by declaring martial law or banning opposition parties or merging all national TV channels into one state-run broadcast or barring men from leaving the country, barring certain religious organizations. I mean, would you say that person's a defender of democracy? No, of course you wouldn't. So I think President Trump is looking at these two men. He realizes that Ukraine cannot fight this war without us. They're not going to win against Russia. And so he wants to reach a conclusion. He wants this to end. And Zelenskyy thus far doesn't seem to want any sort of peace. And so I think what we're seeing is President Trump just trying to apply some pressure to him to get this guy to fold and, for the fighting to stop and to bring some peace to it.
Jason, you spent 10 years in Congress. I spent 8 years in the Marine Corps. Those times overlapped during the Iraq and Afghanistan war. And during that time, and even to this day, and to his own credit, in a very honest way, Senator Lindsey Graham would say, we fought that war and spent that money, and that kept us safe here. We fought it there, so we didn't have to fight it here. That is kind of the narrative, is fight Russia, let Ukraine fight Russia, because if not, they're coming after us next. I think the American people just have lost their appetite and faith in that argument. It's like proving a negative in a way.
Right.
And, I would imagine as a member of Congress, you went through that journey yourself on from where you started to where you ended.
Yeah, there came a point where we could not, figure out what victory looked like. When I would go to Iraq and Afghanistan and I would ask them, these generals, the highest generals we had, what does victory look like and how do we get there? They couldn't answer that basic question. And so here's President Trump, and he made a very solid point. Of course, you won't see it on any of the other networks because they think that, it's all for Putin. And President Trump said, look, my allegiance is to the United States of America, and I want peace. And right now, I'm trying to help you, but you're not willing to help yourself. And he made a very good point that under President Obama, they gave him sheets, like literally blankets and sheets. Mm-hmm. And the hard weapons, the javelins, were given to him by President Trump. Otherwise, they would have already been all overrun. So they need to come to a conclusion, but to have the safety and security net of the United States enforcing that is important.
Yeah, I would imagine so. It didn't take long for the left to attack Trump over his throwdown with Zelenskyy. And now they're pulling a page out of the old playbook, calling Trump a Russian asset. Wow. Eric Swalwell, you remember him, saying Zelenskyy, quote, went into the Oval Office and stood up to Russia's best negotiators. Wow. And that was just the tip of what we call the iceberg.
What we just witnessed between Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and President Zelenskyy inside the White House was an ambush. It was a planned ambush designed to embarrass President Zelenskyy in order to benefit Vladimir Putin.
The propaganda is what's coming out of J.D. Vance's mouth, and it's Russian propaganda.
What a complete and utter mess. And this is a gift to Putin. We don't gain anything by acting like bullies. And this is what bullies do. And just because you act this way, by the way, it doesn't mean that you're tough.
The president of the United States is a coward who is Vladimir Putin's puppet. And the vice president of the United States is a pogue and a coward who is Donald Trump's puppet. And so what we just witnessed was a meeting in the Oval Office between two cowardly puppets and a hero. It's just embarrassing that the only hero in the Oval Office, the only decent human being for that matter, is the Ukrainian.
Yeah, I'll have more on a response to Seth Moulton in a minute. But first, President Trump let the world know who he was aligned with.
I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America.
Yeah, real quick off the top here, I want to address what Seth Moulton said there about the Vice President of the United States being a pogue and a coward. Seth Moulton needs to understand, for those of you that don't know, he was an officer. He retired or got out as a captain for the United States Marine Corps. He has 4 combat tours, so he understands combat. But pogue means person other than grunt. I was a pogue. I fought 2 wars as a pogue. I lost a lot of buddies and half my body as a pogue. So maybe Seth Moulton needs to change his language there, because if you're equating being a person other than grunt with being a coward, you might have a lot of people knocking on your doors tomorrow. That was just that was shameful to attack J.D. Vance, the nuance of his record, who he, by law, is a combat veteran. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Joey. It was absolutely disgusting, and this coming from a wife of a combat veteran as well, and somebody who lost their eyesight in Afghanistan, and as a war correspondent on the front lines covering the war. And I want to say one thing, too. As far as President Trump is concerned, and I love hearing this from the left, it's so ridiculous, saying that he's a puppet of Putin. No, they are the puppets of Putin. This was Russia hoax. Remember, folks, this was Hillary Clinton and James Comey and John Brennan and the intelligence apparatus and our military that was working in contrary to President Trump during his first term. They were the ones that were being the lapdogs for the Russians, because when that fake dossier showed up and tried to destroy his first term and tried to destroy this man who was duly elected by the American people before the whole world, they used actually a Russian asset for that dossier, and Christopher Steele, who was a British MI6 spy. So the only people that are puppets for the Russians are the left, and everything they try to accuse the right of is exactly what they are doing.
But I would just love to know these people who are, full-throated in their defense of Ukraine. What's the end goal? Can Ukraine actually win this war? No, they cannot. So if they cannot win this war, then what are we doing? How much more money do we send them? How much more do we deplete our own arsenal to support Ukraine in an unwinnable war? And so that's where we are right now. And I think that's what President Trump understands, which is why he is trying to solve this, which is why he's trying to work on the mineral deal, why he's trying to work with both sides to come to some sort of resolve, because he realizes that Ukraine cannot win this war.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more to be said about this. I'm very fired up about especially Mark Kelly and Seth Moulton. These people are supposed to have worn a uniform and had some pride to talk about our commander-in-chief that way for no other reason than score political points. I mean, this is a very important issue. So hopefully you guys will tune in tomorrow. We're going to talk more about this.